Please stand for silent reflection, pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Here.
Mr. Diver?
Here.
Mrs. King?
Here.
Mr. McLean?
Here.
Mr. Schuler?
Here.
Mr. Vorbach?
Here.
Mayor Mechanico?
Here. Pursuant to the requirements of the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act, notice of this meeting was included in the annual meeting notice posted on the borough website and in the municipal building and published as a legal notice in the Co-Star newspaper. I'd like to approve the agenda with one added item, the consent agenda, which is Resolution R 2012-174.
Make that motion.
Second it.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes. Thank you. No presentations at this time, no public hearings at this time. You move right to the first voice of the public. Anyone would like to speak on the agenda may step forward and give your name and address. Yes.
Let me get my list. Glad to serve, anybody. First of all, I would like to say thank you to Janine, she's not here, and to Jay for all their cooperation. Last Tuesday election, we had a few mess-ups from Freehold, and he was right there. Janine came to see him once or twice if we were doing all right, and Dick Richard brought us cupcakes, which were delicious. The only thing, like Jim, we all came from no power, and we all went home to no power heat, but at least the church was heated and lit, and they had soup and sandwiches for us.
The community center was freezing cold.
Yes, I worried about you.
There was no heat.
He came in with our pastries, and I said, "How you doing?" He said, "I'm freezing and I'm getting tired of taking ice cold showers." So, but we all got along, and we were very, very busy. I'd like to thank the town workers. They were for everything they've done through the town. I know it was a bad storm. I understand there are some complaints from a lot of people, but that seems to be the way of life with everyone. But they have worked and been diligent, and I think we owe them a vote of thanks. I don't know who's in charge of the parking on the streets. Are we going to go back to off-the-street parking because it's getting horrible up my end of town? A few people mentioned it, and they felt because Butch lived on the street, we should get first preference. I told them that's not the way it works. It has to go to supervision. But are we going to go back to no parking? Because when the plows came around in the snowstorm, I had cars all over. My front walk, on my road, they couldn't get through. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. And we look like a parking lot on several streets in the neighborhood. Now, I thank you, and that's it.
Thank you. Go ahead. Anyone else?
Make a motion to close the first voice of the public.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
On this discussion item, we have a draft rezoning ordinance. Everyone have a chance to look at that? We have our engineer here if you want to step forward and just give a little explanation on this, Joe, and history on it.
Good evening, Mayor Council. As you recall, back in June, the council had requested that we do a planning evaluation of this property. For these properties, they're essentially blocks 46, lots 1 through 8, 9, 10, 65, 66, and 67. If you look at the map of the package, it's essentially the commercial properties from Ware Road down to Hippie Drive. Those properties currently are commercial and residential, split zone, and the planning board recommendation was to rezone that to a B3 zone. The B3 zone, which the planning board recommended, has a list of permitted uses listed in your outline, which is a little bit more detailed than our typical zoning ordinance. We also permit some conditional uses in there, drug stores, food stores, hardware stores, and we have professional offices not to exceed 50% of total gross floor area. I'm going to request that that verbiage be changed. I'll speak with Fred. We want to allow professional offices on the second floor and not to exceed 25% of the first floor. We don't want to see all offices there. We have plenty of office space in town, so that's one clarification I want to make on the record. The planning board also recommends some prohibited uses, such as tattoo parlors, fast food, drive-through businesses, gas stations, pool and billiard halls, amusements, arcades, pawn shops, gun shops, and those sorts of uses. We also include some design criteria that the planning board wanted to include. They talked about 5-foot concrete sidewalks, benches on the frontage, shade trees, minimum planting strip between the building and sidewalk on 71. All parking is prohibited on 71 in the zone, so you won't see parking in the building. But at the same time, you won't see a building right on the front of 71 either. There's going to be approximately 10 feet from the curb line to the building face. So they're not going to be, as is down in Lake Como, where they're right on top of the road. Decorative lamps, of course. Above ground storage, stormwater management is prohibited. You're not going to see any basins above ground. And our approved plantings, all wiring underground, recycling, and those sort of things are addressed here. And then lastly, as part of this ordinance recommendation, we put together a preliminary, I would call it, start for outdoor dining design standards, because we want to allow outdoor dining. We just couldn't say that. We need to establish guidelines. So we put together some guidelines. It's going to be a work in progress, but this is a place to start. This will be reviewed by the planning board when this application comes forward. But we thought this area, the way it's going to be set up, we envision one entrance coming in near the bank and fortune teller, and then as the property develops, there'll be an access road all the way through that property coming up by St. Stephen's Green. DOT is not going to allow multiple driveways, so you're going to have a little thoroughfare back there with business on the east side of the road. And this would be an ideal spot to have some outdoor dining where it's not on 71, but you could enjoy the summer nights and at a cafe or some of the good uses there. That's in a nutshell. I know Councilman Rivers is familiar with it, so is the Mayor Mechanico.
I think if I could, I just wanted, as being on the planning board, the main concerns that were addressed here, I think, with this ordinance, or proposed ordinance, many of the residents in the town are concerned about having a residential component to this. And so that's been, in B3, we do not currently have a B3 zone. This is a new zone. It's sort of a hybrid. And it allows us, from the planning board discussion, to actually limit use in some respect. But also, it took out that residential component, meaning that it would all be business in this area. But we wanted to also make, as Joe mentioned, that it not just all be office buildings, that there be a retail component to it. In other words, you could have stores on that first level. If you go up by Lake Como and you see the bakery or the award store, that sort of thing. But again, set back just a little further. You can set it back a little further and not really affect the parking. And actually have a nicer streetscape appearance too. And that was the biggest concern. And the residential concerns were addressed because some of the residents who were there were favorable to that. That was a big concern at Wickham Manor, was that if we built residences in here, as a plan was previously put forward, there's only a 10-foot buffer between those residences and, say, Wickham Manor. Now, because it's a business zone, you are required to have a 20-foot buffer. So they wind up, the residences get a better buffer that has to be planted. It's not just an open buffer, it has to be planted, so they get screening. And it's just much better for our residents that surround that area. At the same time, recognizing that we have a good commercial zone that we should develop.
And I think the planning board took a lot of time and effort looking at, as the council said, not just professional offices, stuff that, use that are going to serve the community, retail uses, and those sorts of things. So it serves a need for the community.
Now, this is something that's going to have to come to us as an ordinance,
Yes.
and so there's going to be 2 readings.
Yes.
The first introduction and then the hearing. And can we make certain that, I know that there's no requirement to have notification go out to the residents, but can we just voluntarily do that?
Well, if this is a change to the classification or boundaries of a zoning district, which it is, then the municipal land use law does require that notice be sent by certified mail and regular mail to all who are within 200 feet.
Okay,
in
just
all
like the
directions.
planning board.
Yes.
Okay.
So the only exception to that is if this were a change that had been recommended as part of a periodic re-examination of the master plan, then the state law exempts you from that requirement. But I don't believe that this comes out of a prior re-examination, so you do have that mandatory notification requirement, certified and regular mail to everyone within 200 feet.
Oh, this wasn't already in the master plan?
No.
No.
It wasn't?
No, the master
Why would we do
plan,
a town square thing?
No, that was never in there.
and I don't, this is not intended to be a town square. It's intended just to
Right.
more clearly define the commercial use of this property and eliminate the landlocked residential component. So it's not intended to be a town center,
Okay.
so I don't want.
Well, I just,
people-
yeah, I mean, I was not against the town center to begin with, you know,
Okay.
so I don't know.
I know some folks are, but that's not.
I know there were people that were against it,
No,
but I was not one of them, and I'm all for, making the town look better, and I think that this area can definitely use some help, so.
As, just reiterate, you get a better buffer, you get better services for the town, and.
Yeah, it's just that, I kind of disagree with Councilman Zimmer that I feel that, if I bought a residential property, and I would want the property next to me to be residential too. So, that's my only concern. I just want to make certain that the residents of Wickham Manor are notified and that they can come here and we can hear their complaints.
Yes.
And, I mean, it's not going to change my vote, but I would like to have that
Yeah.
area developed.
And they're notified with every planning board application as
Right.
well, so even this ordinance goes through, they're notified, and they'll be notified once again on the planning board level when the applications get down to the nuts and bolts of the application.
Okay.
I don't disagree with residents being notified at all. I have no
Oh,
problem
no,
with that
no,
at all.
no, I mean, when you said that they will like it because there's a 20 buffer versus a 10.
Sure.
But it's it's okay to have a 10 buffer when you have a residential property next to you. And it's just that it does, sometimes I think that it can decrease the value of a residential property than of a commercial property. And I just think that they need to have notice of this. And I would want to have notice if it was my next door neighbor that's all of a sudden being turned into a commercial zone versus a residential zone, so.
I have a couple of questions. You have permitted uses, and they have 35 here. Is that, this is pretty heavily prescribed. I mean, if somebody had a different use,
It's a variance.
you'd have to get a variance. And you don't want more office space. You don't want anybody to live with office.
What we're doing is we understand to develop to feasibly develop the property, you're gonna need office space. So we're gonna put them in the second, we're speaking with developers, second floor would be appropriate, so we're gonna have, the whole second floor is gonna be allowed as office space and up to 25% of the first floor. We don't wanna have, we have numerous offices available on 71 now.
Okay.
And that was the
Just
reason-
trying to strike a balance.
No, just want to understand it. Okay, so it could be other unforeseen uses
Yes.
besides the haberdashery,
Exactly.
So last time I ran into a haberdashery, but so I think I was looking for buggy whips that weekend. But
That was during a hurricane.
during the hurricane, yeah. The other thing that was, did you mention that you didn't want to encourage restaurants?
No, we do want to encourage restaurants.
Okay, because I was looking at this point with outdoor dining, which to me sounds terrific. But you have a cutoff at 8 p.m. And I was thinking in the summertime, I could see sitting out there till, you may want to sit out there till 10 or 11,
Well, we had to consider once again, the balance of residents next door, you know, you have to give them their privacy too, so it was a balance they struck. At the planning board, that was a recommendation when we decided to make it a law. You know, and that's something that, you know, this is, you know, it's a first draft, we can introduce it, and these can be modified.
No, you thought of everything. I mean, this is pretty prescribed. You know.
How-
I just thought it was a little rigid, the 8 o'clock thing, but if that's, you know.
How about the mixed use? I mean, I remember when I was on the planning board a few years ago, they came up with a really nice plan that I thought was really nice, and
There are different
with
schools of
commercial
thought.
on the bottom and
Yeah,
apartments on the
there are
top.
different
and-
schools of thought, and what tends to happen with mixed use is they never sell the office space, the retail space goes bust, and then they come back to us and ask, look back for residents downstairs, so then you end up with all residences.
Oh, no.
And there was a big concern with fire safety concerning residences. That really was a big concern in terms of getting equipment in and out, you know, being able to properly service it. That was the big concern about having a residence there as well. You know, there were some real issues in terms of logistics in getting a certain size truck in there and getting it turned around, which it was really difficult.
Well, just in Belmont's done a couple really nice buildings.
They had the space.
Mayor, if I could just add one thing, and it has to do with the notice that we spoke of earlier to all who live within 200 feet. That has to go by law, by certified and regular mail. Obviously, there's going to be an expense associated with that. It's my understanding that the applicant, who's the owner of the majority of the property, has posted escrow with the municipality to cover costs and expenses associated with the municipality associated with this matter. So those costs should appropriately be taken from the escrow from the property owner. So I guess at this point you have a draft as prepared by Mr. May. It has to be further refined and put into actual ordinance format for your consideration, and Mr. Delaney and I can work on that with Mr. May and bring it back to you at a future meeting at your discretion or direction.
And we do apologize, we had good intentions last week to get this done, but.
That was the draft, Joe?
Yeah. But we were a little busy this week.
Yes, right.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Thanks.
Council reports. Well, all I want to do is, for my report, I just want to thank everyone that was involved, of course, in the storm. Thank the engineer, thank our fire department, chief, I want to thank our chief of police and the police department. I want to thank Mr. Herner and the public works department. Everyone did a terrific job. I want to thank my colleagues up here that pitched in and helped out. Thank Mr. Delaney. I know the residents suffered through power failures, but that was eventually overcome, so I hope everyone came through that all right. There's still a lot of brush and things that have to be picked up, and Public Works will get it all picked up eventually, but it's going to take time, so we just have to have a little patience. But again, I want to thank everyone that did an excellent job. Thank you. Councilman?
I would just like to add the same thanks. I think everybody who works for the town did a great job, and you know, we got through things very well. I'd like to add a message from Mr. Herner, just to understand that the cleanup is going to be unfortunately a marathon rather than a sprint. They're out there, they're working. You've all seen them out there collecting brush, shredding things. They're doing the best they can. It's going to get done. I have a great deal of confidence in their ability to get it taken care of. And last, I want to share something with everybody that I learned when I was on the phone with JCP&L trying to get them to do something, and that is this: 24 business hours equals 3 days. And then they'll call you back at night when no one's there to answer the phone. So I just thought I'd share that with everybody. And again, I think that the employees of the town did a really great job, and I'd like to thank them all.
Councilman Wood?
Yeah, I wanted to say ditto, reiterate what you said. I mean, it's incredible. Everybody really pulled together, Public Works, police, fire. There's everybody here in the council doing something too. And I also saw the citizens kind of pulling together and helping each other out too. And you know, just the whole spirit of this town. You know, we pulled together as a community. And I was touched and grateful that I live in such a wonderful place. On another note, happy to have the electric back after, I guess, about 10 days or so, but I called the telephone, Verizon, just because we had a utility pole on my street, on my property, go down. And they had sent out little vans with workers for 7 days in a row. Sometimes multiple people would show up, and every time they were there, they would say, yep, we need a bigger truck. And I had called in and made an appointment on Sunday, and I talked to them every single time I saw them out there. And again, it happened again. My neighbor tells me 5 times today that people showed up and they said they needed a bigger truck. So I called. I spent a lot of time on the phone today, and supposedly they're coming. If you're in the south end of town, supposedly they're coming Saturday, and they promise to have the right equipment.
And a bigger truck.
And a bigger truck, so we'll see if that happens. It's probably, like you said, you add a couple of days for weeks to it. But
They won't knock us out while they're doing that, will
they may.
they?
Thanks, Butch.
Thank you, Tom. Councilwoman Cynthia.
Well, I would like to say that, you know, I went around town, in other towns with our Chief Petrican, and we were truly blessed. I mean, Spring Lake Heights was truly blessed to be a mile from the beach, and for us to have sustained the relatively little damage. I mean, down trees and wires and power outages notwithstanding, but you know, compared to Manasquan, which is just devastated, and you know, the other shore towns, we truly were blessed. I live in a great community. I saw neighbors helping neighbors. My husband was out there helping cut people's trees down, and so I just, you know, we did have to go without power for, you know, 10 days or more, but if that was the worst of it, you know, and thank you, Dave, for taking me around, and also with, you know, when people don't realize that when you know, we're doing going up to people's houses, people are calling the police to try and check on family members, and you know, we don't have phones, and our cell phones weren't working. Our cell phones weren't calling back people, and weren't, you know, messages were being failed, and so people weren't able to check on their loved ones, and the police stepped up to that plate, and were able to get that done. Also, I would like to point out that Chief Petrican mentioned to me about the fact that we got the utility vehicles, the SUVs, last year, and that they were instrumental in the storm and responding to the same. So, and also I want to say Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thank you. Councilwoman King.
I reiterate the same thing that's already been said. The police department did do a fine job. Chief Petrican took just about everybody up here on council out with him at some time or another. Myself, I rode with him about 4 or 5 different times, even in the middle of the night, checking on things to make sure that there were no more downed wires. And I think they did an exemplary job. I know the chief never went home for probably about 10 days. Maybe it was 11, and there were other guys here on the police force that stayed overnight. And one thing I would like to say is that most of the towns around us had assistance. And they had the state police, or they had the National Guard come in. But the efficiency of our police department was just beyond. And they did not need any assistance, and they were able to handle it and do a terrific job. And I thank each and every one of them for that, along with all the other workers in town who did absolutely terrific. It was very, very grueling and very tiring, and we should be very, very proud of our town, the people in it, and the way everything went. We did not suffer anywhere near the damages that other towns did. Now, talking along those lines, I do want to bring 2 things up. We have a woman in town, her name is Roseanne Hughes, and Roseanne is one of the women who lost her husband in 9/11. And she got in touch with me the Sunday, the week after the storm had hit, and told me that she was making her house a drop-off location for anyone who wanted to donate various items, you know, socks, underwear, shampoo, gift cards, you know, your necessities, diapers, even for kids, coats. There is a whole list here. I understand from Jay before the meeting tonight that this has been posted on our website, but if you don't have a computer, you certainly could come here to Borough Hall and get the entire list. I did speak to Roseanne before the meeting this evening because she was going to attend, but is taking a family into her home who lost everything in Belmar, and they're moving in with her tonight, and so that's why she's not able to meet with us. But her house is located at 2100 Old Mill Road here in Spring Lake Heights, and her phone number is 732-859-3700. And I think this was absolutely wonderful for her to do. She has been doing it for other tragedies that have been happening throughout the country. I know she told me that last year she was up in New York State to help a particular area up there. And then along with that, today something came in Borough Hall, donations needed for Thanksgiving feast baskets. And this again is a contact via a website. There is a drop-off point of 904 Prospect Avenue in Spring Lake Heights, or 2414 Olmsted Avenue in Spring Lake Heights. And Lisa Kaminsky and I don't know the woman's first, oh wait a minute, here it is, Ginny Vidola. They're the two that are taking in the food donations to give to families who cannot get their Thanksgiving together. And I think this is wonderful. If we get any further people who want to do anything for those who are less fortunate, we certainly will make sure that we put that information out for you. And I just want to say thank you to the residents. I know this has been difficult. It's been trying, certainly, with living all this time without your power, and in some cases people without telephones. The only thing I would say, being a retiree of Verizon, I know Tom's having his issues with them, but one thing I would tell you is that if you did have a landline and you weren't hooked up to any kind of multiple systems like Triple Play, Fios, and some of those, you would have had telephone service. So those people who did have just direct hard copper landlines should have had their service. But unfortunately, you know, the gimmicks sell and they're cheap, and so, you know, we go with them. But I do know that in many cases, I've talked to a lot of people who have said that they're going to make sure that if something like this hits again, they're going to have direct phone service. But again, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, and I wish the best to everyone.
Thank you. Councilman Diver.
Yes, again, I would reiterate and say first and foremost, we live in the greatest town anywhere. We have great people, great workers, our DPW guys, our police, our fire, the EMTs, everybody, everyone worked 24/7, around the clock, to do the best we could for everybody that needs you. And I thank my neighbor, Bill Jackowitz, who allowed me to run an extension cord over my fence into his yard to his generator so I could have a couple of lights on in my house. And I highly recommend converting your fireplaces to gas, because that's what heated my house. But it didn't heat the hot water heater. Outside of that, I would make you aware, if you have Fios or you have Cablevision as your provider for internet, telephone, television, you should get a credit. And if you call Cablevision at 732-681-4100, option number 2, you can apply for that credit. And I recommend staying on the phone until you get a representative on there who will tell you, I'm applying the credit to your account today. That's, you know, because you're due that credit. I called, I got my credit. So, and I recommend that to everybody. The same thing with Fios or any of those. Any of those services that provide you that, they have to give you a credit for that time that you did not have that service. Outside of that, again, I don't think we can say enough, and I certainly would point out our administrator who did a great job, Jay, who had trying circumstances of his own, as well as I think we have to recognize Janine, who really pitched in and worked very, very hard over the last couple of weeks here. It certainly was a trying time for everybody, but in true Spring Lake Heights fashion, we were cheerful and we made it through every day because we knew tomorrow was going to be a better one. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking of credits, I wanted to ask Mr. Delaney, do we get a credit from Jersey Central for the street lights that were out?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there are a number of credits that we're going to have Mr. Diver call for.
Oh, don't you worry.
But Mayor, if I may, while I have the opportunity, I just wanted to also thank the council and the employees, the fellow employees here, and the residents of the community for both their offers of assistance and expressions of support to myself and my family during what continue to be trying times. Although we have sustained relatively little damage compared to our neighbors in Seaside Park, we are still unable to return home, as are many of our neighbors here in Spring Lake, Belmar, and Seagirt. But again, I do appreciate that, and I thank the council and my colleagues here in the borough. This is a great place to work, and I'm actually very happy and glad to be here.
Glad to have you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Councilman Schuler.
Yeah, I would like to comment on our Public Works Department. They did an outstanding job cleaning up from the recent storm. They worked 640 straight time hours, 394 overtime hours for a grand total of 1,034 hours to clean up after Sandy and the snowstorm. They filled up 55 garbage trucks for approximately 253 tons of trash generated by these storms. Without the new equipment that we just purchased, the Public Works Department would not have been able to clean the streets in such an efficient manner. A tree fell on the pump station on Old Mill Road. The pump station was repaired with a new roof and continued operating with no loss of service. This quick response averted any water problems, supply problems we had. We did experience some generator problems at the two pump stations, which were resolved in short order, but these generators are aging and we're going to have to be replaced in the near future. I feel that our Public Works Department did an outstanding job during this crisis with Sandy and the snow. They will continue to provide this excellent service as residents bring the storm damage from their houses and backyards to the street in the next weeks, coming weeks.
And Mayor, also on that note, all of those items, and specifically the numbers that Mr. Schuler has referenced, come with a cost, and we are in the process of assembling those costs. I can tell you that to date, we have incurred just under $40,000 in overtime costs that were unanticipated. We do expect to receive full or close to full reimbursement through both the federal and state agencies for this emergency. We will be meeting tomorrow with representatives of FEMA to start that process. Also, there are additional issues that have been pointed out that will require ongoing efforts, specifically for those that may have seen the damage that was done to both Allaire Road Park and Ocean Road Parks. Both of those facilities, while the actual improvements were undamaged, the loss of trees in both of those parks is tremendous and will require an unbelievable effort to clear and remove the downed trees. In fact, we have not even begun to assess that in any terms of actual dollar costs, simply because they do not represent facilities that were essential during the emergency. But they are on our horizon, and as Councilman McLean has indicated, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and I'm sure that we will see that effort in the coming weeks, if not months.
Thank you. Okay, I second what everyone said up here. Thank you once again for everything you've done. For reports and correspondence, we got the municipal court report, and also we have the local finance notice for the resolution extending the fourth quarter 2012 property tax grace period. And this is be voting on this, I'm sorry. This will come up later, I apologize.
And just on that note, Mayor, you can see that the governor, by virtue of the executive order, has automatically extended the grace period until November 16th and has authorized municipal governing bodies to extend it up until December 31st. In consultation with our tax collector, it was her recommendation that the grace period be extended through November 21st, which is next week, and felt that that was sufficient time given all of the circumstances involving Spring Lake Heights.
Thank you, Jay. We have no ordinances at this time. Resolutions. This would be the consent agenda, which is R 2012-174. We need a second, I'm sorry, motion and a second.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any questions on the consent? Roll call, Jay.
This is on the consent resolution number 174.
Yes.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes?
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2012-172, the grace period. Need a motion and a second.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any questions on this? A roll call, please.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes?
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Thank you. Financial resolutions. I need a motion to move the bills to the Finance Committee.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Roll call, please, Jay.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes?
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Abstain?
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Resolution R 2012-173, approving payment of claims on November 6, 2012 bill list.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Roll call, please, Jay.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes?
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Abstain?
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Thank you. At this time, I open the second voice of the public on any item you'd like to speak on. Just step forward, give your name, and
It's
yes.
just me again. I neglected to congratulate Mrs. King on her reelection. She's the only one I saw through the entire time. I know the storm came along. In other years, the candidates have been around earlier. She's the only one that I didn't even know her running mate, so that was that. But congratulations, Sarah.
Thank you, guys.
Her running mate's Chris Tinkin. He's a very good guy, he's my neighbor.
Pardon?
Her running mate is Chris Tinkin.
Well, I
He's a
don't
very
even
good
know who
guy.
he is. And
Anyone else?
Yeah, Rich Carragher, 916 Prospect. Yes, I did call Verizon today, spoke to a person and got my credit, which was higher than I anticipated from hearing others, but maybe because I have 100 TVs in my house. But what I would recommend, I found to be very helpful, because the phones were out because of, either FiOS and other people have triple play or whatever packages they have. That I registered my cell phone with the emergency call system, which was very helpful, because even though my landline didn't work or my computer didn't work, I was getting the messages on my cell phone, no matter where I was. And also, in addition to thanking everybody who's already been mentioned, there was a woman from, I believe she was from the Evergreen Inn, and maybe a couple other women, that provided refreshments at the community center, which myself and Councilman Schuler sampled firsthand to make sure they were suitable for everybody else. And then Mr. Schuler, I believe, took care of the leftovers, make sure they
They didn't go to waste.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Yes, please.
Casey Willems, 1710 Highway 71. I'm also the fire chief here in town. I'd like to thank everybody in the borough who pitched in over the past 2 weeks with this devastation. Our fire company was there for over, I think the calculation up to over 1,200 man-hours of guys going out and working through the storms, and I can't commend the guys enough. But my real purpose is to bring to light two people that really didn't get any real mention, that were pretty much unsung people that made this all work as well as it did, and that's William Gretz and Christopher Campion, who worked with the Office of Emergency Management for the borough. They were here nonstop They were responsible for making sure that the community center was properly wired up so that people could use it. They brought a generator from the firehouse that we had. They brought it, wired it up. They cleared wires. They coordinated all the efforts. Mr. Campion, who's a volunteer, he's not even a member of the the formal emergency management team. He went around so much as taking pictures with his cell phone and transmitting them to the families that asked to see if their homes were okay, that couldn't get down here. Those guys put in countless hours, and Chris got zero pay. He's a complete volunteer and has nothing but the best interest of the town, as mentioned. And I think those two people deserve as much, if not more, credit than myself or many of the other department heads, because those are the people that told us where we needed to go and helped coordinate things to make sure it worked as well as it did. So I want to make sure that those two people in particular get as much of the credit as anybody else. We want to make sure this came out to as much of a positive outcome and a quick resolution as it did. Thank you.
Casey?
Yes?
The generator over at the community center, I believe Billy and Chris get a lot of credit. You came up with that idea because I was there when you came up with it.
Yes, it did.
We tremendously appreciate that because that really helped out the residents.
Yes, and we will have to unfortunately submit a bill to FEMA because in its service there it did break due to I mean, it got us a couple of days worth of work. It worked in this purpose. You know, but we'll have to certainly go through the process to replace some of the equipment, such as that generator that got lost during it. But you know, without those two guys' help and the support of everybody, council, police, fire, EMS, the OEM guys, and the citizens, there's no way that any of us could have done the job that happened here.
Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to say, I don't think we can say enough how truly blessed we are in this town. Yesterday, I've been in Manhattan all week. There are people who will never get their businesses back. There are buildings that are still closed, that were flooded, terrible. And many people have lost their businesses, especially in Lower Manhattan. And I also had the opportunity to be in Seabright yesterday, which I have to tell you, it looks like Beirut. It is so devastating. So again, you know, I can't reiterate enough truly how blessed we are. It's amazing, amazing.
We had an opportunity to add to that. A fire company did deploy some resources to Seabright, Monmouth Beach, and this weekend we're actually going up to Union Beach to assist them. Just because that we were as fortunate as we were not to subject ourselves to the damage and the stress and manpower that they did. So we got an opportunity to see out there, and it really hits home how lucky we are that we do not have beachfront. That pretty much is what makes it or breaks us here. We're far enough inland that didn't damage us, but not so far in a rural community where we got beat up. So I can firsthand testify to that, to what you saw out there. And, you can't really say too much about it. You really can't. But thank you.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Seeing no hands, I need a motion to close the voice of the public.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have minutes, Jay? We don't.
We don't.
No, okay, thank you. Need a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.